Teams monitoring what's going on with Trae Young. Could he be on the move in the summer of 2026? We're going to discuss a little bit about that. Plus, Kendrick Perkins warns the Philadelphia 76ers about Tyrese Maxey potentially demanding a trade. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And the Lakers are interested in Marcus Smart. We're going to talk about all that plus more right after this.
Welcome to the number one place for your daily basketball news and analysis, NBA Central.
What's going on, basketball fans? Welcome to another episode of NBA Central, your number one spot for everything basketball related. I'm the host there, Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at NBA Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be at. With that being said, let's go and get into this content for today. So Shams talked a little bit about Trae Young and teams around the league potentially watching to see what happens with Trae Young and if he ends up opting out of his player option for the 2026 season, saying this: executives in Las Vegas are closely watching and monitoring the future and status of Atlanta's Trae Young. He has 2 years left on his deal this upcoming season, but he has a player option for 2026. He can be a free agent next summer. It's going to be much more flush market in free agency coming up. This is the Atlanta Hawks team that has made tons of moves this offseason. They have a rising young team. They have guys like Jalen Johnson, Zachary Rushesher, but the Hawks want to see how this team looks. Both Trae Young and Kristaps are extension eligible. Now, he does go on to say that by all accounts, Trae Young is locked in and he's excited about the state of this team, which he should be. The Atlanta Hawks are one of the teams that saw the opening in the Eastern Conference, and they basically set themselves up to really see how far they can go in this. Getting Kristaps Porzingis in there, making several acquisitions as far as some role players to come in there and help that team out quite a bit. Also, drafting Asa Newell, who is really, I think, going to be a really good defensive player and has really good offensive upside as well. You add that to Jalen Johnson, who's hopefully going to be healthy at the end of the season. Dyson Daniels takes another step as well. You got Rushesher there. Also, you have a nice young nucleus of players to go along with Trae Young. And I think the Hawks have done a pretty good job as well as building a team that can overcome some of the limitations that naturally you're going to have with Trae Young being on your team. And that's defensively. Trae Young is going to be attacked defensively. He's going to be sought out defensively, and he's going to try to be singled out defensively. But how you can overcome that is having defenders that not only can provide weak side defensive help, but you can also switch to as well. And a guy like Asa Newell is going to help with that. A frontline defender like Kristaps Porzingis is going to help with that. A guy like Maxiell Alexander-Walker is going to help with that, right? These are all players that they have, and the Hawks have seen now with the Pacers going to be weaker without Halliburton and Turner, with the Boston Celtics being weaker without Jason Tatum, and they've made changes on this roster, but I think they're still going to be a pretty tough team. But you got teams like the Orlando Magic that are going to be trying to take a step up in the Eastern Conference next year, right? You have the Detroit Pistons who are developing young team as well, who you can't really say who or what they're going to be because so much of their young core is only scratching the surface. Jaden Ivey hopefully is healthy for the entirety of the season. So you have these things that you're also looking into as well. But the Hawks have done something here, but they left themselves some leeway that, if the Hawks, and I think a lot may be determined by the season, if the Hawks for some reason don't take a step up in the Eastern Conference next year, with then Jason Tatum coming back and other teams getting healthier and other teams taking steps up, then the Hawks can either pivot, right, as far as make some other moves to solidify some things, maybe move off a couple of the young pieces to get some more win-now pieces, or if Trae Young looks at it and decides to opt out and is wine and dine and wooed by another team to leave the Atlanta Hawks, they still have a young core of players that they can start still forging a future with. And that's really the best place to be. I know that the two timeline things is something that a lot of people hate now around the NBA or is a cautionary tale legitimately around the NBA. But if you do it right with players that fit, and let's not act like Trae, he's 26 years old, right? So you have a Trae Young that you can lock in if he does opt out and want to re-sign with the Atlanta Hawks, that you can lock in and have there throughout basically the rest of his prime, right? He'll be 27 when he signs that contract extension. If he opts out in the summer of 26 and then re-up on a longer-term deal, and that's a really good place to be in, to have that player locked in. Even if you do decide to move on from him, a team has his contract then underway for the majority of that time. So the Hawks are really in a win-win situation for the most part, right? Of course, if Trae Young asked to be out of that contract or asked to be traded after you sign him to it, that's a hit to your path for sure. But with the way that they've built these young players on this team and this younger roster, it's not completely detrimental if they decide to do so. Trae Young can sign up to $222 million over 4 years in an extension if he decides to do so, with him being extension eligible this season. And that's going to be a thing to watch out for. Or he can wait, opt out, then get even more money is what he could do and sign for 5 years at more money. So those are the options for Trae Young here. But executives around the league are smart to be watching out for what Trae Young's going to do. There are tons of teams with a lot of cap space in the summer of 26, and they're going to be gunning and looking for guys that can help change the direction of their franchise. Say what you will about Trae Young. He's not a perfect player. He's a defensive limitation. But if you're willing to make the necessary moves to overcome some of that, then you could be in a place where you have a hell of a player and a player that's gotten better as far as assist-wise. He's taking a step up every year of assist, every year of his career, right? And to me, that means that he's a player that is growing, and as the game slows down to him, he can do more distributing. Now, his three-point percentage wasn't the greatest last year, but I think he still offers a lot of things that absolutely he's a player that you can build your offense around and build around. You just got to be willing to invest in the roster that's going to be needed to overcome some of those shortcomings. And we'll see if the Hawks continue to do that. But hearing that teams around the league are watching and monitoring what's going on with Trae Young, even so much that, if he becomes available, they could be looking to put out some big offers there for Trae Young. What do you guys think on that? I always say this, right? Something that I always say is that it's easy to think that a player is going to stay with a team, and more than likely not. I think the most likely scenario, he stays with the Atlanta Hawks. That's best for him. It's best for the Hawks. But once you become an unrestricted free agent, and whether a team calls your agent and wants to wine and dine you or whatever it is, sometimes, they can make compelling offers and change your mind. So we'll see what happens when it comes down to that. I'm not saying that necessarily it's something that the Hawks, our Hawks fans, need to be worried about year in and year out, because ultimately, I don't think that anything's going to happen with it. I think that ultimately Trae Young is going to be back with the Atlanta Hawks. I think that makes the most sense for him. It makes most sense for the team. And I think that's just smart business there. But, like always, you can never say never, especially in the NBA when it comes to deals. And we'll see how that shakes out for Trae Young. But let me know your thoughts down below. And speaking about one team that could eventually look for a way out, Kendrick Perkins, who buried the lead here. I'm not a Kendrick Perkins guy. I think Kendrick Perkins says some all-time stupid shit sometimes, but he's spot on sometimes too. I want to be clear there. I'm not saying that Kendrick Perkins is a complete idiot or anything like that, but I do think, sometimes he just says shit. But sometimes he has a little bit of insight. But Kendrick Perkins saying this. At one point, we're looking at the Philadelphia 76ers. At one point, we saw structure, we saw stability, we saw culture. And then all of a sudden, since Daryl Morey has taken over the job, it's gotten worse. All of a sudden, you're looking at your franchise guy, one of your franchise guys not being able to start the season next year, and Joel Embiid, because he's telling us right now that his body is not right, which we already know. Paul George already underwent a procedure. Now you look at your next guy, and diamond in the rough that you found in Tyrese Maxey, and the Philadelphia 76ers are on the clock. Now, I understand what Perk is getting at here, right? Going so far as to saying this. They're on the clock because when it comes down to Tyrese Maxey, and when I say on the clock, because if they keep trending in this direction of no culture, no stability, guess what? Tyrese is going to want out of Philly, and we know who his agent is. It's Rich Paul. That's the part that you need to look at in all of this, right? When Rich Paul is your agent, anything is possible. And Rich Paul is not against maneuvering and using his relationships, and even in negotiations with other deals and teams that he's had conversations with, he is not against using that as leverage to get his player out of there. And that is something that they absolutely do need to be worried about this upcoming year, is that, as it goes on, I won't say this upcoming year, but as it goes on, if it does remain to be instability in Philly. Now, for what it's worth, Tyrese Maxey has shown nothing that we know of as of right now publicly that's shown that he's even considering or ever has considered leaving the Philadelphia 76ers. If anything, he's grown into the leadership role there. He seems to really be welcoming of that leadership role there. But at 24 years old, when you look at how Tyrese Maxey has developed himself since being the number 21 overall pick in the 2020 draft, another draft that was projected to be a weak draft that actually turned out to be pretty damn decent there, you look at how he's grown as a player. And eventually players do want to win, and players get sick and tired of losing or not being able to catch traction on the team that they're on. Now, is Maxey one of those players that you got to worry about with that? I don't know. Like I said, haven't seen or heard anything that to me would say that Tyrese Maxey is a guy that you got to worry about trying to head up out of there at any point soon. But I think Perk just generally has some points being made there. If you do not have a culture, if you do not have stability, if it does not look like you're gaining traction, while the 76ers have built a nice young core of players that I like a lot there, McCain, Maxey, VJ Edgecombe, who they just drafted as well, Dembana, like these are players that I really do like on that 76ers team. But if you keep being a team that just wills or spinning, you just never know what and how that could affect a player, especially as more players gain more power. Rich Paul is his agent, which is a big thing that you do have to look at over there. Now, the benefit of it is that they have Tyrese Maxey locked into a contract until the end of the 28-29 season. But as we've seen before, that does not mean that a player can't ask and try to get their way out of there. And this is what the 76ers are going to have to hope for doesn't happen. Because the last thing you want is already a franchise player in Joel Embiid who may never play back-to-backs again. Has already said things like, something's going on here. I'm doing cries for help in your organization. And having a 25-year-old Tyrese Maxey looking at this and saying, I don't want to be part of this shit. So that's what the 76ers have to look out and worry about. I think Perk raises some valid concerns there. And we'll see how it shakes out. Because as we know with Philly, they have to draft their players. They have to do that. And Daryl Morey is a player that's never against shaking things up, but sometimes he can get a little too cute with his moves, and then they end up blowing up, and then you're just sitting there left holding the bag. And that happened last season for them. Now, hopefully they have better health this season. Hopefully in the moves that they've made and making some right decisions that they're not as bad in a spot that bad going into next year, but you just never know. If was a fifth, we all be drunk. So we'll see what happens when it comes down to that. But let me know what you guys think on Perk's comments down below. Do you think that there is a legitimate chance that Tyrese Maxey could look for his way out of Philly sooner rather than later with the state that franchise is in? Or do you think that they've built a nice young players that seemingly may fit pretty well together and that they can find a path going forward, even if that does mean Paul George and Joel Embiid aren't healthy and aren't necessarily as big of a part of that as what they were initially hoping when they built this team? Let me know what you guys think on that down below. Lastly, we've heard that Los Angeles Lakers are interested in Marcus Smart, right? We've heard that that came down to Anthony Irwin, who is a Lakers insider for Clutch Points. He's a senior Lakers insider there when it comes down to it. And he did say that LA is hoping to reignite trade talks during Summer League for former Defensive Player of the Year Marcus Smart. Now, Marcus Smart is not a player who was what he once was at his height. I think everybody understands that. It is what it is, right? When you look at Memphis, they had to attach a first-round pick to get rid of Marcus Smart when it came down to it, which the Washington Wizards took on. Wish my Bulls would have took that deal, which it was offered to them for Lonzo, but that's a story for another day. I won't get my trauma over here. But for the Lakers to get involved in this is a idea that does come from Clutch Points that says this. The Lakers could acquire Marcus Smart for a combination of Gabe Vincent, Maxi Kleber, and 2032 second-round pick. Now, would they be willing to do that? I mean, the Wizards already got a first-round pick to take on Marcus Smart. To get an additional 2032 second-round pick, Gabe Vincent is not a player that necessarily can't contribute somewhat for you. He can be a veteran presence there. Maxi Kleber's a solid player as well. Would the Wizards be willing to do that? That's the question there. And I think the Wizards would. I think they're in a combination of going younger. They've made a lot of smart decisions on going younger with their roster this offseason, but they're also in a position to be able to stack assets. You do both here. And so we'll see what happens here if this ends up materializing. But the Lakers are clearly looking for defenders. They need defenders. They need defenders, maybe even 3-and-D players, to fit around Luka and the new path that they're going forward. Marcus Smart doesn't necessarily bring the offense that he would bring there, but I do think that Marcus Smart could help them out defensively. Now, Gabe Vincent is a player, too, that I think could help them out, too, but he hasn't really been able to stay healthy, which is one of the biggest knocks on him. But we'll see what happens over that point in time. But let me know what you guys think on that down below. That's my time on this Saturday. Make sure you guys are following us at NBA Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, NBA Central Show at gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and or voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything basketball related. I'll see you guys the next time I feel like making a video. I would say probably tomorrow, but with the way things are going, probably today. Either way, I'll see you guys then. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Breaks Media.